So guys, last week we had the suggestions passed to the developers for October 2024, right? So I'd like to share to you guys 5 vehicles, or 5 things, to be honest, in general, that were accepted into consideration for the devs for implementation of the game that are so interesting that I think it's worth to talk about. So let's just get into it, right? The first one is suggested by Matthias1, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the Supermarine Speedo Mark 14, yeah, the F Mark 14. The Supermarine Speedo was a further development of the Supermarine Spitfire, obviously, right? It was designed to give the plane improved maneuverability at high speeds and also make it a lot faster. It has a way stronger engine, a Rolls-Royce Griffon, of course, but in the 69 version with 2,375 horsepower, so really strong, max speed of 777 kilometers per hour and a rate of climb of 25 meters per second. It has the normal guns for the time, obviously, for Spanos, right, 20 millimeter. Bombs and rockets, of course, but yeah, the Super Spitfire, called the Speedful, should be added, and it would be very cool. These are one of the type of aircraft that there are a lot of friends that love this type of thing, and I know why. I mean, it's just basically these very early Cold War, very advanced, you know, super props that are just so amazing that even the jets are afraid of them, right? So the Speedful would be very cool in this variant, right? So yeah, very cool. The next one was it's more of a thing, an addition, a feature than a vehicle, right? But it was presented, or the suggestion was made by Oinkmu. But basically it is to be able to use less fuel in vehicles. So right now you have basically minimal fuel, which is around, if I'm not mistaken, let me just check right now. It is right, I think it's like 30% of the fuel tanks or something like that. But in a general sense, sometimes this is too much for some vehicles, especially helis and even some bombers, a lot of bombers actually, props and stuff. The minimal fuel is basically hours of times, you know. So what he's suggesting is to us to have a minimal fuel up to like 5%, so that you can actually have a bomber not needing to fly with more than an hour and a half of fuel in the engines, right, making them fly a little bit better in matches, etc., right? I think it's kind of funny that we have these options in the higher tiers and stuff that really consumes a lot of fuel, but when it comes down to some bombers and helis and stuff, you gotta just get used to flying with a very heavy aircraft, right? So it makes a lot of sense, and it would be cool to see it. The next one is another aircraft, the J7G. It was suggested by the Thrill 820. And it is basically an upgraded model of the J7E. It has more than 30 upgrades done internally of the aircraft, but the major things is that it has a 60-kilometer range radar with proper pulse Doppler, so it's a proper radar, not just a rangefinder. And it has a helmet-mounted sight, of course, and all sorts of modern stuff internally, right? It was able to carry the PL8s, PL9s, and even the modern PL5 E2s, right? It would be the most modern J7 and a very high BR modernized version of the old MiG-21F, right? So it would be basically a higher BR than the J7E, but just a little bit more modern, and from the 2000s. Yes, this aircraft is from the 2000s, so it's very interesting that we would see something like this. A lot of these J7Es were also upgraded to G variant, so maybe they could add a version that is just a modification for the E variant that it is in the game, but it would be cool to see as a premium or something like that. I mean, it is very cool to see, or even in a tech tree, right? It is very cool to see the J7D, so why not see another version of the J7 like the G variant, which is one of the latest models ever to be produced in China of the J7. Very cool aircraft, and I would be really happy to fly. Then we go for the next one, the 2S14 Zalo S. The suggestions was made by Ural, and yeah, it is a version of the BTR-70 that had a 85mm that is automatically loaded, right? So you can fire APF-SDSs, heats, and other rounds, and there was only one prototype that never saw service, right? But it would be very similar to something like the BTR-88 that we have in the game, with an older design on the actual APC, right? And instead of being an APC, it is a tank destroyer. It would be really, really fast, very light, very nimble, of course, no armor, but a very fast firing 85mm with some very interesting rounds, right? The BR of these, I don't know exactly what it would be, but it depends on the rounds, you know. It should be pretty modern, so I would say, I mean, on the very least, like a 8 point something, you know, the 8.7 maybe, 8.0, 8.3, 9.0, depending on the ammunition that it receives, right? Maybe a little bit lower if the ammunition is not that good, because it is a very, like, small round, right? So it might not penetrate a lot, but it would be very, very cool. Only one prototype, of course, but it would be cool to see the Zalo S. A very, very well famous vehicle. Even though it has only one prototype done, it is a very, very well-known vehicle, which is pretty cool. And the last one, which is probably the most interesting one that I left for final, it was suggested by Wrecking Ares 283, and it is the Dassault Rafal LF1. So what is the Rafale? Well, I don't need to say it too much, right? It is the modern day French aircraft that they use, but this version would be a naval Rafale that it's very, very early in the stages of production and service. So it could actually be added right now, for example, without causing too much of a problem. It wouldn't even have a gun. I mean, it could be retrofitted with a 30mm, but even then, I mean, initially it didn't even have a gun. It didn't have any air-to-ground, IRST, or any cameras or anything like that, and no Mika IR as well. It could actually carry the Magic 2 and the Mika EM with a very powerful radar and a very powerful engine, design, everything, of course, right? So it would be cool to see this, but at the same time, honestly, I think Gaijin is just gonna add a normal production model, even though it would be very cool to see this because it could be added like right now, and it's cool that they are accepting more Rafales into consideration to be added. But at the end of the day, what Gaijin normally like to do is to add production aircraft. Like full production. Not that this is not full production, but you know what I mean. An upgraded model that can carry more stuff. Look at the SU-24, SU-34, stuff like that. They are just the Ak-141, even though it's a prototype and stuff, they added as if it was in the production model, right? So even an aircraft that never saw the service life of a real combat like capability, they added as it was supposed to be when it was added in that service, right? So it's very different, right? But at the end of the day, it would be cool because we could see a Rafale like this coming right now, and it wouldn't be too OP. It wouldn't have a gun, maybe. It would have the normal missiles that we already have. So it would just have a very enormous amount of performance and other things, but at the end of the day, it would be very, very early stages of performance in the Rafale, so it would be very, very cool, guys. But yeah, these are my 5 top picks that I did from the suggestions passed to the developers. I will leave all the links in the description for you to check it out. There are plenty more on the suggestions that were passed to the developers, and let me know in the comments which of these 5 would you like to see more in the game. Since they are considering it, it might actually get added even in the next not this update, but in the next one in December, maybe. I don't know, right? So let me know in the comments what you think about it. I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, always helps a lot to leave a comment, and bye, guys. See you.